All right, good evening, everybody. This is the June 14th meeting of the Permanent Municipal Building Committee. We have a quorum tonight for tonight's meeting. We have no warrant. The next thing on the agenda is the approval of the meetings for the minutes rather from 5/24. Everybody got a chance to read those?
Yep.
Looking for a motion then?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, Bob.
I'll second it.
Let's see, Stacy,
Stacey Maris, yes.
Brian,
Brian Pasquale, yes.
Bartlett,
Bartlett Harvey, yes.
and myself, yes. All right, Shaker Lane feasibility. Stacy, have you heard anything on that?
Yeah, we just met last week. I'm just pulling up my notes right now. So we met last week for the next steps that we have. So we are waiting for, I'm just taking a look at my notes again here. We were a little bit late on a deadline that we needed for the RFQ, I believe, but that needs to just be in within the next 2 weeks now. So Steve Moore, I believe, is working on that to get it finalized. And then once we have that in, then we can start looking for an OPM candidates. And let's see. I'm just trying to make sure I don't miss anything for it. That's pretty much it. So we're just going through the MSBA process. They have a specific calendar and deadlines and timelines that we have to work through. And paperwork that we have to get done. So we are just working through that. It's definitely becoming a challenge, I think, with all of the administrative issues going on in town hall, being able to prioritize this. I know Ryan's really overloaded with a lot of the administrative stuff that he's doing for all of the different boards. So it's just something we have to keep on track of, because if we miss deadlines, then that could put our grants at risk for getting for the school. So we need to fill those spaces in town hall.
So is this something that Steve figures is not going to be a problem reapplying?
Yeah, no, he's spoken to our consultant for the MSBA, and she said, like, it's fine if you haven't gotten it in. It does just it moved us back, I think, like a month from getting approval on the next step. So each time we miss something, it does bump us further back, I think, on the priority list. I don't know if that affects funding or anything, but it's certainly not something definitely not anything I think we want to be in the habit of doing. So yeah, pretty much.
If I may, Stacy, just so that you know, the MSBA, from what I've gathered, is that their agenda was full for the August 30th meeting, and so that you needed to get the RFS in so that you could be on the agenda for the 25th of October meeting, so that they would approve that to get that released to you guys.
So Brian, is that slowing everything down with the agenda being cut out?
No, so it won't affect. Obviously, you want to get it in as soon as possible so that you can get the process started. Getting the team on board, but I don't believe that would affect any of the grant that comes from the MSBA.
All right. Any questions for Stacy or for Brian on this? Okay, we'll move on. Brian, I don't know whether this has been closed out or not, the library.
Yeah, so we've got two things left with the library. One is the LEED grant. We're following up with LEED constantly, trying to find out where we are with their review. Once we achieve our accreditation, we'll be able to apply for the MBLC grant for additional monies. We did have the ribbon cutting for the solar panels the past weekend. I thought that went very well. Senator Eldridge was in attendance, and it was taped, and I thought that it was a nice tip of the cap to the project and to the town and everybody's patience, as it took a long time for those to actually get up on the roof. Once we do hear back, I also was informed that the MBLC was Littleton and had they were able to maybe secure more funding for the grant due to the challenges that they faced being billed during the pandemic. So they were in the process of corresponding back with the trustees of the MBLC to see if the town was going to be able to achieve any further funding, which is great for them.
Is that funding for the solar panels or funding for the library itself?
For the library itself. So the overall grant was just over $5 million that came from the state. We did all the paperwork and reporting. We are in receipt of all of that grant, and the state informed them that they qualified for further funding for the grant. So all is a positive on that end. The last thing that we have for the library is the contractor for the solar panels. They finished the work. We paid them final, and they submitted a small change order of work that they felt was not in their scope, which is maybe it's due to the lack of inexperience they have with public work, but that's not really how change orders work, and sending that in at the end of the job. So I worked with the engineers and the designers. The change order that was received was around $14,000. The engineer had disputed quite a few of the line items that they had on that change order. What I wanted to bring up to the PMBC is the costs, most of the costs are valid. And it's because of some of the equipment that was designed was obsolete. They needed to upsize an inverter and another power station. So my question to you is, my response to the contractor is, I'm going to provide my opinion on what I feel is valid or not. Costs of which will be within the budget that I provided at the beginning of the project. But I can send to PMBC what my recommendation is before responding to the contractor. And if anybody has any questions, they can let me know. But that would be the final payment that we'd have to the contractor, and we could release them from the project.
I would say do what you have to do and submit it to Steve and see what Steve has to say on it.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else question on that?
No, that sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Yep.
So Brian, you want to keep this on the agenda for the next meeting then?
Let's do one more meeting, and that I
Okay.
think would be good. Thank you.
High school roof, Brian?
Yeah, so a little bit of good news on that. The contractor is all their paperwork's in order. We had a kickoff meeting with them a few weeks back with Rockwell Roofing, who's the contractor, and Russo Bar, who's the designer at the high school. They're raring to go. They're going to start the day after school is out, the 28th. And they published a schedule actually earlier today that shows them wrapping up the work by the end of July.
Wow.
And then they're proposing to have, 1 to 2 weeks of punch list work. And then they're really done, which they're done by the second week in August, which I was glad to see. We have a little bit of float. We're not really up against it there.
That's great. So do we need anything else to give them anything else, or they're just ready to go?
They are ready to go. There was a couple answers, just some minor administrative things that we just needed to coordinate with Steve Mark about the high school, but I can just deal with Steve on that.
Okay, that's great. Brian, for Senior Center?
Yeah, Senior Center, we've a lot of work has taken place in the past few weeks, and I wanted to provide you guys an update of where we are. And the hope would be, Bob, if it's something that possibly you'd be involved with, and I know Bartlett's being a big help with our pre-qualification, but we just got our last estimates done. One from the CM, Commodore Builders, who does their internal estimating of the design development. And we also did a third-party estimator, AM Fogarty, who's through our design architect. Yesterday, we held a reconciliation meeting, which is when we take both estimates and we get everybody in the room, try to understand exactly if there's any variances, where that comes from, so that we're more confident with the number. In parallel with that, I met with the finance director and the town accountant to understand exactly what the appropriations have been for this project. And where we stand right now is we're over budget. We are roughly around to the tune of around $500,000. And so what that means is, as the designer is moving into construction documents, we are having value engineering meetings, selecting different materials, possibly going different routes as it comes without affecting the footprint or the use of the building. We do have some placeholders for soil mitigation that we need to do some more testing on. But ultimately, what I'm proposing is to have a representative from the Pmbc, maybe Mark Raumbacher, because he's been heavily involved, and also Liz from the Senior Center to acknowledge some of the changes that we're proposing in order to get ourselves into budget. Once we get into budget, we'll proceed with the rest of the construction documents, and we're scheduled to have the design completed at the beginning of August. And then that would go out to bid to the filed subs that we have pre-qualified. So we have a lot of work to do. I believe in the next 2 months. I think that it's my opinion that we owe the town and the residents an update on where we are and how our schedule looks. But I'd like to hold that meeting in the near future so that we can have everybody on the same page as decision makers going forward, so that we can be confident when we go out to bid that we're going to stay within budget.
Is that going to be an in-person meeting, Brian, or?
It doesn't have to be. What I've done is I've already got Commodore working on proposed value engineering. I've done the same with the design team and their consultants, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers. I've asked them to look at their designs, see if there's any type of economizing that can happen to try to cut down on these costs. Obviously, we're in a market right now where if this building was built 6 years ago, it might be, 3/4 the cost of what we're looking at right now. But we're battling with it, and we're trying to get ourselves down into a place that we're more comfortable.
We seen any drop in material prices at all?
Slightly. We're seeing some slight drops in sheet metal and steel, but to say that they're gone down isn't really. We've seen a little bit of slowdown in the escalation that we've seen in the past year or two.
Can I just ask too, because I'm still just kind of getting an idea of these whole processes. Is this because the scope of the project has changed, or just because labor and materials has just increased since we initially got those quotes?
Correct. When we did an initial estimate, which was based off a schematic design, which is very early on in the project where we keep a lot of contingencies, the price of the project has not, the size of the project has not increased square footage wise, but we've gone up at almost $2 million based upon the material and labor that is associated with it. As of right now, the construction costs of where we stand is over $900 a square foot, and I've never seen something like that. So the hope is that we can make some concessions and get that down, hopefully under 900, so that we can proceed and make sure that we're still within our numbers.
And is that something that, as the project is being built out, because it's obviously not going to be a quick turnover to build, but we'll be paying market price for materials when those materials are needed and ordered. It's not. Yeah. It's just like once you lock in a price that
correct. Yeah. Okay. So with this delivery method, we're doing CM at risk, which is Chapter 149A. When we're able to bring the construction manager on early, who will oversee the construction of the project. After the design is done, we go out to bid for the filed subcontractors, which we are pre-qualifying right now. We take the prices and the low bids of those filed subcontractors, and the construction manager will put together what we call a GMP, or the guaranteed maximum price. That is the number that they need to build the building for. And they know the budget, they understand, so they're working hard, because if we can't hit the budget, we do not have a project, and they don't get their fee. So yeah, so those are the challenges we're working on right now.
Okay, thanks for explaining.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Brian? Brian, when do you propose to set that meeting up?
I'd like to do it within the next 2 weeks. So I was going to reach out to Liz, yourself. I'll include Steve and the Pmbc on that as well. We meet on Wednesday mornings, but if that doesn't work for others, we can do something in the afternoon or even in the evening, so that we can. I want to feel comfortable that everyone's brought up to speed on where we are. We are proposing one thing as well, it would be a small amendment to the designer's contract, and that is to have the environmental testing done of some of the soils around the tennis courts. That will give us as a project a better understanding of the makeup of the dirt on site. It is going to be an export site. We're going to need to bring the soil either off site or reallocate it somewhere on the site. And in order to do that, we're going to need to classify that. If we have the information, we're able to, we think that the dirt is clean. And if the dirt is clean, then that will be a lot cheaper and will help us with our budget numbers going down.
How many yards of fill do you think there is, Brian, in there?
The current estimate right now is 7,500 cubic yards would need to be hauled. We will be looking at the driveway where the parking is for the library. If there's any areas around there that maybe can be regraded or something can be built up, maybe a small berm, in order to save on any of the hauling costs. But the fact is, if we do get some environmental testing and there's deemed to have some contaminants in this and it gets classified as a certain type of soil, that cost can get expensive. And we want to know that answer now before we proceed with firming up our guaranteed maximum price.
I think I asked you before about the highway department possibly taking some of it.
Yeah, I forget his name, but I did speak with the DPW, Steve. I spoke with the director. Great guy. He got back to me and said, you know, he might have some spots for us to help us out if it can save the town some money. The thing is, though, if we are hauling it off of the property, you know, he's going to want to know what the makeup of that dirt is too, because we can't be spreading contaminated soil somewhere else. So,
Because that used to be a burn site, is that right? In that area, Bob, did you say that used to?
Yeah, so we determined that there may have been a small incinerator or somewhat, and the makeup of, we had several borings done on the site, and that's not for environmental testing. It's more or less to see what the makeup of the dirt is, to make sure that to see what type of sand, or if there's any boulders, or if there's any types of rock that's going to be in there. In one of the borings, it determined that there was some ash and cinder in the top layer of where the boring was taken. So we're pretty confident it's in a small contained area. But this environmental testing we would take on the other side of the tennis courts and near the ash site to make sure that it's as small as we think it is, so that we could quantify it before we go out to bid.
Is that something you're going to do pretty much right away, Brian?
Yeah, I got the proposal today. I was going to send that to the PMBC. It's $11,000. That's inclusive of a machine coming out to dig a test pit, as well as taking the samples, sending them off to the lab, having them analyzed, and then have a report would come back to us for inclusion into the documents.
Mm-hmm.
So I will I'll prepare that and put my recommendation letter and send that over to Steve, and he can send that to the committee as a whole.
All right. Any more questions for Brian? All right, we're all set then. Member input?
I just had,
Bartlett?
oh, go ahead.
No, I just want to apologize for Brian for not showing up for the pre-qual meeting.
You did all your
Earlier
work
this week.
already. Yeah,
Well, I was supposed to be attend the meeting. Anyhow.
Hey, that's quite all right. You had done all your homework already, so I was the bad student. I still have some work to do on the pre-qualification. So
Okay.
we're about 80% complete. We have another meeting in 2 weeks. That will probably wrap up our pre-qualification. We'll go through any vendors that we feel need to be maybe analyzed a little more to make sure that they're okay to bid on our project. But we're in a good position there.
Good, thanks.
Stacy?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about, I didn't know if PMBC has anything to do with the renovations that are going to be done at the Indian Hill building for the new administrative offices and the park and rec. Do we at all get involved in that, or is it only like new builds at PMBC?
We will get involved. We will get involved in it once it comes to fruition. You know, once they do it. I think Brian can answer that a little bit better. Brian.
Sure. We provided what we called a quick feasibility study. We were under the gun to try to get some round numbers as what it would cost to do the renovation. We worked with LLB, who is the designer that did the space needs for the town hall, excuse me. And we provided that. The numbers seemed to be a little higher than the appetite of the town. And Ryan told me he'd be getting back to us about what the next direction and what the next route would be in order to provide some documents and whether we would be going out to bid for that renovation.
Okay. All right, so that's still in kind of preliminary stages of trying to get it started. Okay.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Brian Pasquale?
I'm all set, Bob. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm all set. A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Bartlett,
In favor, yes.
Brian,
Brian Pasquale, yes.
Stacy,
Stacey Scott, yes.
and me, yes, too. Bob Rumley, yes. Thank you all.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob.
The
Thanks,
next meeting
everyone.
is
Thanks, Karen.
June 28th at 7 p.m.
Sounds good. See you then. Thank you.
Thanks, bye guys.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
all.